Study Section 3. Major theoretical perspectives in clinical psychology. Introduction. This lecture introduces to you the major theoretical perspectives in explaining behavior in clinical psychology. These perspectives are sometimes referred to as the models or theories of psychopathology. Each of these perspectives is discussed along with some essential tools used in assessing and giving therapy in clinical psychology. Objectives. At the end of this lecture, you should be able to 1. Discuss and differentiate among the various models, perspectives in clinical psychology. 2. Listen and identify the major tools used in clinical psychology. Pretest. 1. What do you understand as the psychodynamic perspective in clinical psychology? 2. How can free association be applied as a technique in psychoanalysis? Content. Clinical psychology is dominated in terms of training and practice by essentially some major perspectives, theories, or models. Some of the major perspectives or models are psychodynamic, humanistic, cognitive, behavioral, and group therapy, family therapy, and couple therapy. Psychodynamic perspective. The term psychodynamic is related to the dynamic interplay of psychological processes. The psychodynamic perspective was developed out of the psychoanalysis of Sigmund Freud. This perspective assumes that psychological disorder results from anxiety produced by unresolved conflicts and forces of which an individual is not aware of, that is, in unconscious mind, and various mechanisms he uses to repress it. In other words, the core object of psychoanalysis is to make the unconscious conscious, to make the client aware of his or her own primal drives, namely those relating to sex and aggression, and the various defenses used to suppress them. The essential tools for psychoanalytic process are the use of free association, dream analysis, and transference. Free association is a tool where the client is encouraged to express to the therapist all thoughts, feelings, wishes, sensations, memories, and images that come to mind, however embarrassing or trivial that might seem. Dream analysis is a tool in which interpretation aided by free association is applied to the manifest content of dreams in an effort to reveal their latent content, which invariably consists of unconscious wish fulfillment that are potentially disturbing to the dreamer and would interrupt sleep if they were not disguised through symbolism. Transference is defined as the tendency to take unconscious thoughts or emotions about a significant person, e.g., parent, and transfer them onto another person. Major variations on Freudian psychoanalysis practiced today include self-psychology, ego psychology, and object relation theory. This general orientation now falls under umbrella term psychodynamic psychology, with common themes including examination of transference and defenses, and appreciation of the power of the unconscious and a focus on how early developments in childhood have shaped the client's current psychological ITQ. A psychoanalyst is helping a client overcome obsessive gambling, and he tells clients to talk about just anything that comes to his mind. And therapy, what type of technique is he using to help the client? A. Dream analysis. B. Transference. C. Free association. If you picked A, you are wrong. Dream analysis is applying interpretation to dream in an attempt to identify unresolved conflicts and anxieties. If you picked B, you are wrong again. Transference is transfer of emotional feeling to the therapist in lieu of the real individual who the client has conflict with. If you pick C, you are right. Why? Free association is a technique where the client freely talks about anything coming to mind that the therapist might understand the unresolved conflict in the client. Humanistic perspective. Humanistic psychology was developed in 1950s in reaction to both behaviorism and psychoanalysis, largely influenced and popularized due to the person-centered therapy of Carl Rogers, often referred to as Rogerian therapy, and existential psychology developed by Viktor Frankl and Rollo May. Rogers believed that a client needed only 3 things from a clinician to experience therapeutic improvement: congruence, unconditional positive regard, and empathetic understanding. Macmillan, 2004. By using phenomenology, intersubjectivity, and first-person categories, the humanistic approach seeks to get a glimpse of the whole person and not just fragmented part of the personality. Rowan, 2001. The aspect of holism links up with another common aim of humanistic practice in clinical psychology, which is to seek an integration of the whole person, also called self-actualization. According to humanistic thinking, each individual person already has inbuilt potential and resources that might help them to build a stronger personality and self-concept. The mission of humanistic psychologists is to help the individual employ these resources via the therapeutic relationship. There are major expectations of a therapist with an orientation from the humanistic perspective. This includes emphatic, unconditional positive regard, and congruence. Empathy is the capacity to understand and enter into another person's feeling and emotions, or to experience something from the client's point of view. It is quite different from sympathy. Empathic therapists are ones who can transmit the client's sense of being understood. The expression of empathy conveys a kind of sensitivity to the needs, feelings, and circumstances of the client. Unconditional positive regard is nothing more and nothing less than a respect for the client. Empathy is the capacity to understand and enter into another person's feeling and emotions, or to experience something from the client's point of view. It is quite different from sympathy. Empathic therapists are ones who can transmit the client's sense of being understood. The expression of empathy conveys a kind of sensitivity to the needs, feelings, and circumstances of the client. Unconditional positive regard is nothing more and nothing less than a respect for the client as a human being. Your attention or response to a client should not be based on or attached to any condition, congruence, or genuineness, as sometimes called, occurs when therapists express the behavior, feelings, or attitudes that the client stimulates in them. In other words, they do not smile if they are hungry. Rogers believed that in the long run, clients will respond favorably to this honesty and congruence, knowing that here was a real person dedicated to their welfare. ITQ. Humanistic therapists will expect a client to respond to three of the following. 1. Congruence. 2. Hope. 3. Unconditional positivity. 4. Unconditional positive regard. 5. Sympathy. 6. Empathy. A. 1, 4, 6. B. 1, 2, 3. C. 1, 4, 5. If you picked A, you are right because the therapy is built on congruence, unconditional positive regard, and empathy. If you pick B, you're wrong because hope and unconditional positivity is not part of the foundations of humanistic therapy. If you picked C, you're wrong because sympathy is actually part of the errors and don'ts of humanistic therapy. Cognitive perspective. Cognitive therapy sees individuals as active participants in their environment, judging and evaluating stimuli, interpreting events and sensations, and judging their own responses. An individual develops, they think about their world and themselves in different ways. Their beliefs and assumptions about people, events, and themselves are cognitive schemas. Individuals have automatic thoughts that are derived from these beliefs that they are not aware of. How individuals shift from adaptive beliefs to distorted beliefs is referred to as cognitive shift in Beck's system. There are two major offshoots from the cognitive perspective. Cognitive behavioral therapy, CBT, by Beck, and rational emotive behavior therapy, REBT, by Ellis, both of which grew out of cognitive psychology and behaviorism. CBT is based on the theory that how we think, cognition, how we feel, emotion, and how we act, behavior, are related and interact together in complex ways. In this perspective, certain dysfunctional ways of interpreting and appraising the world, often through schemas or beliefs, can contribute to emotional distress or result in behavioral problems. The object of many cognitive behavioral therapies is to discover and identify the biased, dysfunctional ways of relating or reacting, and through different methodologies, help clients transcend these in ways that will lead to increased well-being. There are many techniques used in cognitive behavioral therapy, such as systematic desensitization, Socratic questioning, and keep a cognition observation log in order to understand thinking patterns of an individual. An individual with faulty thinking pattern is expected to go through what is called cognitive restructuring using some of the aforementioned techniques to have a proper thinking pattern that will positively affect his feelings and behavior. While REBT though works on how we think, but in a nutshell explains dysfunctional beliefs as three main forms of emotions. 1. I must do well. 2. You must treat me well. 3. The world must be easy. These beliefs require challenging. ITQ, Wale is a civil engineer, has been having problems with his boss since his current promotion, and he actually received query from his boss over his assessment of a contract which had gone bad. Since then, Wale believes his boss had preference for his native man who they vied for this post together, despite that the other colleague had received queries too in the past. But he has not agreed that Bako is a very painstaking and critical man, even pushing himself to the limit. Wale is presently depressed and in therapy. What therapy might be the most appropriate to treat his depression with this little information? A. Psychoanalysis. B. Exposure therapy. C. Rational, emotional, behavioral therapy. If you picked A, you are wrong, because we don't have enough information to do psychoanalysis for the client, and it's usually based on unresolved conflict which we know nothing of. If you pick B, you're wrong, because exposure therapy is a graded exposure to feared stimulus, and this is not appropriate response. If you pick C, you are right, because if we have the information that he has dysfunctional emotion, which, if challenged, will help the client to function normally. Behavioral perspective. This perspective focuses on the belief that all behaviors are as a result of learning. This form of therapy was highly influenced by the works of H.M. Chenov, Reflexes of the Brain, and C. Darwin's in evolutionary argument. This influenced Ivan Petrovich Pelov, 1849 to 1936, Russian psychologist, to do research on the psychology. This influenced Ivan Petrovich Pavlov, 1849 to 1936, Russian physiologist, to do research on the physiology of digestion, conditioned reflexes and the origin of neuroses, and this developed ideas on conditioned reflexes working with dogs, which fused into classical conditioning and responses such as food, unconditioned stimulus, leads salivation, unconditioned response. Food and bell, conditioned stimulus, appeared repeatedly. Bell alone leads to salivation, conditioned response. If bell ceases to be followed by food, extinction occurs. Also, operant condition, which explains that behavior which is followed by satisfying consequences is more likely to reoccur, and behavior which is followed by unpleasant consequences will occur less frequently. Having concepts such as positive reinforcement, negative reinforcement, punishment, and token economy. ITQ. Group therapy, family therapy, and couple perspective. History has shown that group therapy was practiced as a method of choice by only a handful of dedicated therapists. Others used it primarily because their caseload was so heavy that group therapy was the only means by which they could deal with a large number of patients. Sometimes group therapy was used as a supplementary technique in psychological intervention. All these have indicated that group therapy as a method has achieved considerably more visibility and respectability in psychological intervention. Different approaches to group therapy have emanated from different theoretical backgrounds. From psychoanalytic point of view, what group therapy does it that it becomes a vehicle through which his individual patient can express and eventually understand the operations of unconscious forces and defenses and thereby reach a higher level of adjustment. The origins of the family therapy can be traced in the 19th century social work movement. However, it was on the mid-20th century the family therapy became a popular form of treatment. Family therapy works with couples and families and emphasizes family relationships as an important factor in psychological health. The central focus tends to be on interpersonal dynamics, especially in terms of how change in one person will affect the entire system. Therapy is therefore conducted with as many significant members of the system as possible. Goals can include improving communication, establishing healthy roles, creating alternative narratives, and addressing problematic behaviors. Couple therapy is not limited to married couples, but can be provided to unmarried couples, same-sex couples, and others. In one sense, couple therapy can be construed as a form of family therapy. For example, when a husband and wife are seen together and the focus of treatment is on marital relationship itself rather than on the problems of the individuals, a form of family therapy seems to be involved. Summary. In the lecture, major perspectives, sometimes called theories or models in clinical psychology, were discussed. Some of the major perspectives discussed were psychodynamic, humanistic, cognitive, behavioral, and group therapy, family therapy, and couple therapy. End of study session 3. Thank you for listening.